Good morning. Welcome to the AM Show. My name is Sweetie Abochi, and today's edition of the AM Show, as we do, we'll start with the news. Let's begin from Member of Parliament for Medina, Francis Javier Sosu, who has initiated a new bill in Parliament to amend the Criminal and Other Offences Act to introduce community service and bond of good behaviour as alternatives to the traditional custodial sentences and fines for petty crimes. Now, community service in the context of criminal justice refers to a form of alternative sentencing or punishment that involves individuals who have committed offences, performing unpaid work or service for the benefit of the community. Mr. Sosu believes these will be beneficial to society while easing congestion at the prisons.
Criminal and Other Offences Procedure Amendment Bill 2023 seeks to introduce some five very critical amendments. The first amendment is to amend Section 148 of Act 30 so that we can introduce a regime that increases the penalty for compensation. It's obvious that the courts do not resort to this section because we only have the penalty as being equivalent to 500 penalty units. So if people who commit misdemeanors or petty offenses are asked to pay compensation, it's most likely that they'll be paying just 500 penalty units. For that reason, maybe the courts do not resort mostly to that. So the bill seeks to increase the penalty unit to 1,000 penalty unit. 1,000 penalty unit. That way, the courts can resort to compensation as a means of alternative sentencing. Then Section 294 is also being amended. Currently, when you look at Section 294, as in the penalties available when a person commits misdemeanor, it's only custodial sentences or they are fines. And so, by this amendment, I am seeking that we would introduce community service and bond of good behavior. What this means is that anytime a person is convicted of a petty offense, like somebody has stolen goat or cow or has gone to steal tubers of yam, and the court is wondering what type of offense, what type of penalty to impose when the person is convicted, the court has an option to now impose a community service or a bond of good behavior. And then also Section 294A, which is a new introduction, is seeking to impose duties on judges when they are imposing sentences. What this means is that when a judge is faced with a situation where he or she has petty offenses, who have been a petty offender who has been convicted, the judge would have to, as a matter of law, first consider non-custodial sentence before imposing a fine or a custodial sentence. So that is a new obligation the law is imposing. Of course, the law is seeking to also impose an obligation on the Minister for Interior by a legislative instrument to prescribe the processes of community, the community sentences. On the 20th of December 2023, I caused to be sent to the office of the Clerk to Parliament of the Republic of Ghana a new bill, which is called the Community Sentencing Bill. And this bill is a very crucial bill because when you consider the kind of congestions that we have at the prisons of Ghana today, and the fact that in the current Act 30, which is the Criminal and Other Offences Procedure Act 1960 at 30, we have some forms of non-custodial sentences or alternative sentences, particularly for what we know as the petty offenses or petty crimes. And yet the courts have not made good use of these alternative sentences.
Now, an eco-tourist is asking for advocacy to stop the destruction of forest reserves in the country. According to Prof. Erasmus Owusu, if nothing is done to stop the devastation, Ghana may not have any reserves in a few years. Professor Owusu spoke at a stakeholder conference in Tamale.
The conference brought together stakeholders involved in protected land management within the Mole ecological landscape to deliberate on the issues facing wildlife and forest reserves. Speaking at the ceremony, Council member Professor Erasmus Owusu said after 1996 there hasn't been any new reserve established, yet the old ones are being destroyed.
When you look at after the forest reserves, we stopped establishing forest reserves a long time ago. And even when you look at the ones that were recently established, they were established under decrees. It's executive instruments. Rawlings goes to Kaku, case is presented, he said, look, let's make it a protected area. We didn't have to go through parliamentary issues, nothing, and it was established. Chabogo, they said, if it were today, it would not be done. As I speak now, we've been fighting for Atiwa Range to be converted into a national park. We fought that battle for almost 10 years. It has never come home. So that should tell you that if we don't do something as practitioners, amplify our voices, get other stakeholders to join us in this fight, it will not be long, all our protected areas will be gone. I don't want to sound controversial about the recent issues about what's the name? Mining in forest reserves and all that. That's another thing. And I thought about the whole thing. I said, look, we should be serious about what we're doing as a country. And what shocked me was the fact that somebody was bold enough to apply to go and do what? Mine in Kaku National Park. Really? Where have we gotten to? I started working with the Wildlife Commission, and I can bet you 1991, 1992, in the 90s, nobody would even think of even going to fell a tree near the boundary line of a wildlife reserve. In fact, you were afraid. Forest reserves had illegal logging operations, but wildlife conservation area, you dare not. Now people are bold enough to go into wildlife protected areas. I don't think we should sit down and watch that.
The Director, Stakeholder and Ecotourism Wildlife Department, Dr. Richard Jima, highlighted some successes chalked under the Savannah Integrated Conservation Project implemented to conserve the wild.
First of all, let me just say that the project helped in supporting sustainable financing of the park through the initiative that we had, that is the craft shop was reactivated, and by that the communities living around the Mole landscape were able to bring their craft materials to the shop and serve as outlets for them to sell their products and also get revenue. And so once we want to protect biodiversity, we should also get benefits from the biodiversity and also the communities surrounding it. It didn't end there. The park itself also benefited from some branded modern products, and that is by way of promoting ecotourism. And so when you come to the park, there is a shop you can go and buy products. And these are all means for why we generate revenue to enhance the sustainable financing of the park. I must also add that we also supported the design and construction of directional signs to the park, and these are all efforts to promote ecotourism. Through the project, we built viewing platforms that when tourists come around, they are able to see our wildlife better.
Now, Medical Director of the Upper West Regional Hospital, Dr. Robert Amisia, is excited about how the hospital has surmounted its challenges despite being just 4 years old. He's optimistic this places the hospital in a better position to serve its customers. He's been speaking at an award ceremony for 60 staff of the hospital and other individuals who have contributed to the positive development of the facility since its inception. Here's Rafiq Salam's report.
Though it was commissioned in August 2019, the Upper West Regional Hospital opened its doors to the public 5 clear months before they were able to have access to quality healthcare services at the facility. The hospital started with a seed capital and was therefore expected to take care of only outpatients. With the improvisation and ingenuity of the management and the zeal of the catered staff of the hospital, they held the bull by the horns, work above themselves to ensuring that the objective of the government in providing a state-of-the-art 160-bed hospital for the region and beyond is fully realized. Despite the challenges, Medical Director of the Upper West Regional Hospital, Dr. Robert Amisia, opined that the biggest strength of the hospital is the quality equipment and the people manning them. Hence, the need to award them in order to motivate them to increase their output.
We have a lot of strengths in this hospital which we are leveraging on. And our strength is that the hospital is well equipped. It will interest you to know that we have some of the equipment in this hospital that are hard to find in other parts of the country. Everyone here is not working for free. All of us working here are paid monthly. I get monthly salary. Ever since I started working, fortunately I've been missed 1 month. But if I go beyond what I'm supposed to do for my salary, there must be a system put in place to say thank you or have a pat at your back for going the extra mile. And we think when you go the extra mile, you put a lot of smiles on the faces of people.
Our Power Soldier Minister, Dr. Hafiz bin Sali, commended health workers in the region for their commitment to their work, attributing it to the leadership style of Dr. Damien Powiri and Dr. Robert Amisia.
Dr. Damien took over as Regional Director of Ghana Health Service. I have seen a tremendous change in the health sector. We have seen many more people come as doctors. We have seen nurses come to the region. We have seen many midwives accept postings to the Upper West region. And the story is not the same. It's not different when it comes to Dr. Robert.
Our Power Soldier Director of Health Services, Dr. Damien Powiri, on his part, is optimistic that despite the initial challenges encountered, the hospital has overcome many of them and is fulfilling its mandate.
Now, there's a sigh of relief for pupils and teachers at the Sanchiga MA Primary School following the construction of a classroom block. Now, the project, which is funded by the Embassy of Japan through the Grassroots Human Security Project, is in partnership with Life Care Ghana. The pupils used to study under a dilapidated mud, brick and thatch makeshift structure constructed by members of the community. Here's another report by Rafiq Salam.
Established in 2009, Sanchiga MA Primary School initially started with makeshift structures built from mud bricks and thatch. Over time, these structures became unsafe, endangering the lives of the learners and facilitators. The increasing learner population, which has resulted in overcrowding in the classrooms, failed to meet the required standards for primary education and therefore impeding on effective teaching and learning. Head teacher of Sanchiga MA Primary School, Ankrah Faisal, spoke of the difficult circumstances that the pupils were in, which he said made it extremely difficult to discharge their duties.
We describe it as a death trap because the structures, they were improvised structures. They were made from local bricks, and it was just about 8 to 9 feet tall. And the roof, the zinc was just, if a teacher goes in, the zinc is just closer by the teacher. It means that when the sun shines, it means that the classroom will be unbearable hot. And after 12, we cannot manage ourselves inside the classroom. We have to come out to manage ourselves under shade. But thankful.
All will, however, be a thing of the past, as the Japanese government has come to their aid through a world-based non-governmental organization, Life Care Ghana. Life Care Ghana, recognizing the school's plight, collaborated with various stakeholders and sought assistance from the Japanese embassy in Ghana. A significant milestone was marked in the Sanchika community with the commissioning of a new 16 classroom block equipped with ancillary facilities, 120 classroom furniture, teacher sets, and furnished library. Included in the project also is a 4-seater biodigester engineered toilet and a mechanized borehole at the school. The learners expressed their joy at the commissioning of the state-of-the-art facility, showing their excitement through poetry.
Education is a light upon our life. Education does not have discrimination. With education, we can make our dreams come true. Many failed due to lack of ambitions and thoroughness towards education in our life. Education is the pillar of our independence.
The total cost of the project is back around $91,856. Executive Director of Life Care Ghana, Abdul Rahman Momen, expressed his gratitude to the people of Japan for their immense support.
Our agency, Life Care Ghana, which had been supporting the community with basic supplies and furniture, realized that the situation of the school was beyond our resource capacity. Having observed the predicament of the 80 children attending the Sanchiga Primary School, we collaborated with stakeholders involving the PTA, SNC, GES, and the World Municipal Assembly to submit an application for support to the Japanese embassy in Ghana. Luckily, on our part, the team that visited the community to undertake due diligence even realized that the situation had even gone worse than we had described to the embassy. This was because some of the classroom had actually collapsed, and the remaining ones could better be described as death traps than classroom for human use, and their teachers. Elders of Sanchiga community, please permit me to use your words and say a very big baraka thank you to the ambassador and the people of Japan for their generosity in providing the funding for this magnificent building.
Japan's commitment to Ghana's development was emphasized by Ambassador Mochizuki Isanobu. He stressed the significance of quality education in nurturing future leaders.
One of the best ways to guarantee high-quality education is to give students access to good facilities that will offer them with a supporting and enabling learning environment. In that sense, I'm happy through the DGHSP scheme, your friends in Japan have improved and will improve the Sanchiga Primary School to a better state than it was before.
The project was funded by the Embassy of Japan through the Grassroots Human Security Project aimed at creating an enabling learning environment. The Japanese ambassador to Ghana reiterated his government's commitment to assisting Ghana through advanced technology, acknowledging Ghana's growth. Reporting for Joy News, Rafiq Salam, Sanchiga.
That's definitely good news for the peoples of Sanchiga. But still on inadequate infrastructure in our schools in the country, Adan Technical School in the Adan East District is facing a similar issue, which is adversely affecting the intake of freshmen as the school grapples to find space for 900 new students. Headmistress Evelyn Azansu revealed this during the donation of students' beds with mattresses to 2 educational institutions by the Member of Parliament for Ada, Comfort Doi Gansa. Carlos Kaloni has more in this report.
Despite Adan Technical School requesting space for 580 students this year, the demand for admission has already reached almost 900. Headmistress Evelyn Azanso informed Joy News that they have only one classroom for the 900 students, as inadequate infrastructure continues to hinder effective teaching and learning.
This year, after giving the classrooms to second and third years, we have only one classroom left for first year's intake. And then, we asked for 580, but now we are hitting almost 900. And where to put them is a challenge. Having one classroom for first years, where are we going to put them? You see, so those are the challenges that we have. And the number of furniture that we have will not cater for even the continuing students and then the freshers that are coming. You see the 18-unit classroom block there. Rainstorm has taken it off. We wrote letters severally for government to come and then the contractor to come to our aid, but still nothing has been done. And we have a 3 classrooms there. At least when roofed, it can ease the challenge for us a little, but that one too still is standing without any attempt to re-roof it for us. We are not able to contain the numbers that are coming because most people wanted to come to Adan Technical Institute. But because of the challenges we have on the ground, we cannot take more than we can.
At Adan Senior High School, students and school authorities lament inadequate beds and running water as major challenges requiring urgent attention.
They're not having enough beds in the dormitory, and some of them used to sleep on bare floors. When wake up in the morning, they get up the beds at one place and then leave for school.
And apart from the beds, we also face water challenges.
As an interim measure, MP for Adan, Comfort Doyo Ganza, through the support of the German government, has donated a number of mattresses and dual student beds to Adan Technical and Senior High Schools.
In all, we have 36, so we have sent, we have 56. We have sent 20 to other school, which is Adan Technical, and we have brought 20 to Adan Senior High. And the health sector too, we have given them 10. We have over 3,000 students who are to use water to bath, which no water tanker can serve them. But we have a river just across the street. So if we get a pumping machine, that can pump water from the river to this side, it's a clean water. They can use it for the high shores, like washing and bathing. That can solve a lot of problems for us.
District Chief Executive for the area, Sarah Dugbaki Pobi, revealed that interventions have been included in the Assembly's 2024 budget to address the infrastructure challenges facing the schools.
I think in 2024 budget, we have put in rehabilitation of schools. We have decided we are not going to build any more schools, but rehabilitate those that we have. So that's the stance that we've put in place. I think Adan Technical is part of our budget that we did this year, that we are going to help renovate everything that they have there. But with the classes that they are saying, we've also gone to Get Fund to also plead with them to see in their budget if they can give us additional classrooms for them to also have their way to at least admit more students in the school.
The MP also supported students affected by the floods caused by the spillage of the Akosombo Dam at Pediatokope with various cash amounts and some groceries, remaining resolute in collaborating with stakeholders towards the socio-economic development of Adan residents. Carlos Caloni, Joy News, Adan.
That will be it for the news for this morning's AM show. But you want to stay for the news review. We have NPP parliamentary candidate hopeful for Ifija Kwabre South, George Sapong, who's joining us as our guest for the AM show news review. Right after that, we bring you AM Sports. Mubarak Haruna will do his thing. Now, the Africa Cup of Nations is on with some surprises. We'll have a review of Ghana versus Cape Verde's game as we look at the chances of the Black Stars seeking to progress from this state. We've got a citizens microphone on this, but do let us know, did you watch the game? What do you make of the performance of the Black Stars? If you didn't have dinner before the game, I hope you've got something to eat now. And whether we can progress from this group, we'll discuss all that on the AM Sports. You can also give us your thoughts. But you also want to say for a one-on-one conversation with Dr. Sam Ankrah, who wants to be president. We'll explore his policies and all on today's show. Do stay with us. There's more in the next 2 or 3 hours. This is the AM Show, and my name is Sweetie Abochi.
Welcome back on the AM Show. Time now for us to zoom into the news review. Of course, the news and the start of the show brought to you this morning courtesy of Sweetie Abochi. Yeah. Anyway, so we get into the news review now. And as you know, Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic helping us to bring you the news review every morning on the AM show. They're offering you prostate screening for free if you're a man, fertility screening for free if you're a woman. Here's where you can locate them. Here in Ankrah, they can be found at Spintex opposite the Shell signboard, Kumasi. Chronomap way here behind the Angel Educational Complex in Takrade Anaji Estate, Tema Community 22, Techiman Hanswe and Siamanzama. Their call lines 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. Now, my guest this morning, you know the parliamentary primaries of the MPP are just around the corner, come the 27th. Well, today we're going to be having an interaction for the news review with the MPP's parliamentary candidate, hopeful for Efija Kwabre South, George Sapon. He is our guest this morning. Mr. Sapon, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, my brother. How are you doing?
I cannot say I'm the best, but you know how the times are. We day, God day, we day.
I'm sure you are doing so well. You look so fine, so I guess your pockets are looking fine. Don't
be deceived by the suit. Don't be deceived by the suit. Plus, you cannot sit from where you are and determine how well I am.
Well, in some of these things, we can only go with the eyeball observation. We can only go with what we see. So, I mean, you know, like as scientists, we say if there's a problem with the eye, you can see. If there's a problem with the stomach, you cannot see because no one sees what goes on in the stomach. So, yeah, I believe you're doing fine.
All right. Well, so let's get into it. Quite a number of matters to discuss. But I'd like to find out from you, for starters, why Efija Kwabre South? I know, of course, you live in that constituency from time to time. You spend time in that constituency. But what makes you think you can take the Efija Kwabre South, get the nod from the people, from the constituents, and even in the main election gets the nod as well? What are you bringing to the ticket, so to speak?
Okay, so I think that's a very good question. And then, like you put it, why Efija Kwabre South? Efija Kwabre South because, I mean, this is where I come from, this is where I live, this is where I lived all my whole life, and then I've contributed to the constituency as well. And if you take a look at Article 94, which is equally affirmed by some provisions in the MPP's constitution, it gives me every nod so far as I'm above 21 years, and then I've lived my last 10 years in the constituency. I've contributed to its progress, then I duly qualify constitutionally to contest. But if you come to the proceedings of the party as well, I duly qualify as well. I'm serving the party at the constituency level as the constituency's youth wing patron, at the regional level as the patron for Ashanti Regional TESCON, at the national level as the vice chairman for the MPP Students Committee, and I'm presently a member of the national communicating team of the MPP. So at the side of the party, I've paid my dues to the party, and then it's important that I come down to serve my constituency as well. And so when you come to my constituency, you would realize that if you look at the electoral numbers, there's been some deficit. If you compare 2016 to 2020 election, NDC grew by some 6% in my constituency. On the other hand, MPP also dropped in votes marginally. This brings a situation where you need new energy to, as it were, cover up for the shortfalls. Now, if you realize, if you take a look at our electoral dynamics and the demographics of the country now, about 73% of our voter population are in youthful ages. That is about 18 to 40 years. And then if you're a political party and you intend to capture power, retain power, or perform significantly in the upcoming 2024 elections, the first thing you do is to make sure you put somebody who can connect with the larger population out there. And if you come to Efija Kwabre South, I've lived my life, I connect with the youth. when I was about to file my nomination, I had over 1,000 youth follow me for my walk with GS, where I went to submit my form. And so when it comes to mobilizing the numbers, if you come to Ifija Kwabe's house, it's just one person who can do it, and that's just the person called George Sapon before you today. And so, my brother, this time round is the time for the youth. President Akufo-Addo has had a vote of confidence in the youth. He's appointed persons who are of youthful ages. Our Minister for Information, who works closely with you, is a youth. His deputy is a youth. If you go to the likes of Honorable Abu Jinapo and Co., they are all youthful people. Abu Jinapo was made Deputy Chief of Staff at the age of 33. And so, if you come down here, it is encouraging for people like myself. I'm barely 34 years. And then if I put myself out there and the delegates have confidence in me based on what I have done in the constituency, based on my contribution for the party's progress, and based on the fact that I am competent, I have learned, I am skilled, I have worked, I have served my country, I've worked with the Ministry of Information, I've worked in the Office of the President, I've served voluntarily for the Kumasi Business Incubator, I have served as a teaching research assistant for KNUST. I've paid my dues to my country and my party. And so if it comes to who to represent the people, I do not think there's a better person than myself, because if you come down to the constituency, it is just me who is contributing to the development of the constituency. The party is people and the progress of his people. So my brother, I think that my people need to make the right choice. I was the first to pick my nomination, first to file my nomination, which shows the seriousness I have for this process. And thankfully, when we did the balloting, I picked number 1. And so when delegates go to the polls on the 27th, I encourage them to just place their thumb on the number 1, and it is a decision they will never regret. It's a choice for competence, it's a choice for new energy, it's a choice for humility, progress, and it's a choice that would let the party move forward and not retrogress.
You said something, though, about when it comes to all these people, you are the only one in the constituency, doing this and doing that. Are you suggesting that the others are sitting, with their hands, arms akimbo or something of the sort, including the incumbent?
Thankfully, my incumbent is not contesting.
Oh, okay. It's one of those country. It's one of those constituencies, huh?
Yes, he served this country and he is brought.
Hello, Mr. Sapon.
To service to an end. He's been deputy. He's served as Deputy Minister for Energy, and so he served this country. Now it is time for other people to also join in. And like I was saying earlier, there are things that the party has done. So, for example, in the just ended voter registration exercise, I was the only aspirant who contributed to the party for the party to be able to execute its mandate as a party ready to capture more votes and get more people enrolled on the voter register. No other aspirant did that. In the just ended district assembly elections, we had people who are pro-MPP who contested the elections, some of them who are delegates of our party. I'm the only aspirant who supported them. I printed posters free of charge for almost all our delegates who join in. Almost all our delegates who join in. I also did a lot of things for them. Those who had football competitions, I distributed sets of jerseys, over 45 sets of jerseys. And I also made sure that the necessary resources that we needed for the election day were provided for by myself. So when it comes to contributing to the party, I've paid my dues to the party, and I'm still doing it. When it comes to the larger constituents, we are helping with their welfare issues, in matters of health, in matters of education. We are doing our best to ensure that our constituents benefit from the blessings that God has duly granted us. So my brother, if you come to Ifija Kwabe South, I do not think that there is any candidate better than myself. And if you need a mobilizer, if you need somebody who would be able to cope up the votes of the MPP upwards, it is just your support.
Tell when the delegates vote whether or not you are that prime candidate from the viewpoint of the people. But 2 quick things I want us to look at before we get into the newspapers this morning. One has to do with slapping electricity tariffs or utility tariffs with VAT. Now, one of the things that when I go around, a lot of people are, upset about, there's a lot of angst when it comes to tariffs like electricity being slapped with VAT. Already, of all the plethora of taxes we're paying. Some people keep asking, why are we still paying for COVID-19, that levy? We're the only country in the world. Now, there's the vehicle income tax, which has come up, the emissions levy, and now people are contemplating, this whole bit about slapping electricity tariffs with VAT, even as we deal with the IPPs, the independent power producers, and everything in between. What is your take on that? And then let me get your take on that before I move to the next one, because it's quite a swing. What's your take on that? Too many taxes. Businesses are feeling the pinch. And even now, as far as this one is concerned, residential users are also getting affected. What's your take?
Okay, my brother, I think the question you asked is a good one. For me, I feel that it's important that we keep our lights on. And whichever way that we have to do that, we have to do it, no matter how hard it pinches us. So, for example, in the period of about 2012, 2013, up until about 2016, we had lots of challenges in our energy sector. And it was because some of the challenges were structural and some of them were financial. It is important that we keep all these agencies financially fluid. And if you ask me, if we are unable to meet our commitments financially and all the other things that we need to do, and we have power fluctuations in the long term, it is businesses that lose, it is individuals that lose, and it is the livelihoods of people that are affected. And so if we have to be able to keep our lights on and we have to suffer a little more, or there are certain commitments
I beg to differ with a little
people,
more. It's quite a lot. If you look at the increments in tariffs over the last few years, and with these taxes that are being slapped on, it is not a little more. Point of correction. Please go ahead.
I think that those are matters of perspectives. What I may see as a little more may be seen as maybe seen by another person differently, like you rightly put it. And I think that these are matters of opinions. And just like I duly respect yours, I'm sure I also have the right to side with mine. But what I would say is that for me, I would rather have my lights on no matter the cost. Because if our lights are not on, industries suffer. If the industries are suffering, it translates into the larger economy. It translates into inflation. It translates into the point where producers will have no other option than to go with a cost-sharing burden where they shift any extra cost to the consumer. And that will naturally propel the economy into points where we have consumers bearing more than they necessarily need to bear. So
but that is happening already, Mr. Sapon. George, that is happening already. With how things are. When you go out there, business people, what they are telling you is, now our hands are tied. There's nothing we can do, and we're just going to have to translate the cost. But let me make a point before you proceed. You say that we must be willing to pay whatever it takes to be able to have electricity. To some extent, I agree with you. Electricity, having it is better than not having electricity. But are you contemplating inflation? It has fallen year on year. Month on month inflation is going high. The cost of things are actually going high if you focus on month inflation. If you focus on the cost of borrowing, the cost of living, you'd realize that people have scanty resources to even manipulate, to take care of themselves. Look at fuel prices. Look at the cost of food, the cost of drink, the cost of utilities. All of these, it's a basket. So while everybody, rationally speaking, to some extent I agree with you, we would prefer light to no light, so would be willing to expend. But in some instances, even that purchasing power to be able to want to expend more is not there, especially now. So I don't think it's really an option of as far as we can go, to get electricity, because that purchasing power is not even there. That's the whole point.
So, my brother, here's the other way that we can look at it. If you take a look back to, let's say, last year, April or March, and you do a comparative analysis, you realize that some of the macroeconomic factors have relatively stable. If you look at the exchange rate, it has relatively been stable. If you look at consumer pricing, it has relatively been stable. We got to a point where inflation was almost hitting 50%. It's been relatively stable. Now, what that means is that we don't need to exacerbate the effect of these factors. Now, sometimes there's a single factor that can cause all other extra factors to shoot up. So, for example, if you have an increment in fuel pricing, it will not be a matter of just fuel pricing, but then it will affect every other consumable on the market. Now, when we talk about electricity, in the absence of electricity, my brother, here's what's going to happen. Cold stores are going to suffer the pinch, and so as much as the people suffer the losses, it will translate into what we are going to consume and the pricing we are going to pay for it. If people are sewing, the regular tailors and the seamstresses out there, they will not even have the energy to work with. Manufacturers will have to pay extra costs to get alternative energy to move on with their production. Importers will suffer, exporters will suffer, and that will translate into the larger economy. For me, I believe that if you make the economic arguments, or if you put pen to paper and you try to forecast the likely effects of the absence of electricity, as we saw in the 5 years under President Mahama, my brother, whatever we have to do to keep our lives stable, we wouldn't necessarily have to do it because the effects are not the same. The impact of the economy when we have no lights is significant.
Hello, George. All right. We'll try to reconnect with George Sapong. He made a statement about 5 years of Dumso and John Mahama, which isn't the case. But whatever way we want to play those political games, I like to play along. I was going to ask him about now the intermittent power outages, the struggles with paying the likes of WAPCO, the IPPs, and the impact, because he's talking about cold stores and the rest. And we've heard very recently, with even the latest one, and every time the power goes off, you have people like barbers, cold store operators, among others, who are hard hit by these power outages. A day, two. There was a time last year when I had cause to actually pick a phone and call Samuel Dubik Mahama, the MD of ECG. We had conversations on. I was without light for 4 days, so I don't know what he's talking about. And when you call it Dumso, some people act like, oh, it must last a certain length of time before it is Dumso. In my case, I mean, in my community, in my neighborhood, there were people, whatever they were doing, whether sewing, barbering, cold store operations, they simply couldn't do anything. So I don't know what it will take, but all I'm saying is we want power, and it must be sustainable. Those are not within my purview. I'm not in government. I don't work in the energy ministry. Let those in charge do the right thing. Simple. In other jurisdictions, if the light goes off, it is crazy. It's unimaginable. It doesn't happen. Here, it's becoming the norm. We don't want to get to the likes of, Nigeria. We don't want to get there. And I say this respectfully. Nigeria is my second home, but some of what we've seen recently in Nigeria, we don't want to get there. And in some parts of South Africa as well. So let's maintain excess capacity. All of a sudden, that excess capacity is not necessarily translating into what we need. I know the dynamics. It goes beyond just excess capacity, which we don't even have anymore. But we're supplying other countries. Recently, we had to cut off some of those countries. I'm saying let's get our act right, because businesses are suffering. Individuals are suffering. Now you're slapping VAT even on residential consumers of electricity. I mean, when is it going to end? And of course, we're in the grips of an IMF program, self-inflicted IMF program. Do we have George Sapong back? If not, I shall proceed from here. Mr. Sapong, can you hear me? All right. I was going to ask him about the Black Stars and their performance against Cabo Verde or Cape Verde yesterday. You can share your thoughts with me. I'd like to know. I didn't watch the match. It's nothing about patriotism. I had other things to do. And even if I could have, I don't know whether I would have, really gone into watching the match. But I was hoping that for Cape Verde, because looking at the group we're in and Egypt, I was actually hoping that Egypt would actually go down to Mozambique and until I think the 97th minute or so. That was the plan until that penalty converted expertly by Mo Salah. But there was a foul before the fact which should have been taken, some feel, before that penalty was awarded, and VAR did not go back to that. But let me start with some of the headlines, and when we're joined by George Sapong again, I'll run some of them by him. Daily Graphic, that's where I'm starting. Ekumfia Asaman Chidomhema demands Mills's autopsy report. This is one of the interesting things that came up over the weekend. I'll get into it. Family directs Queen to AMA 37 Military Hospital for copies. I found it so interesting and a bit disingenuous at a point, because when I heard of it, I was thinking, oh wow, so the autopsy report is still not. And then when I heard from Dr. Samuel at Mills, I felt, whoa, how is it that all these people weren't aware? Because we know the processes when someone dies and where you can get an autopsy report. So I felt they had checked in these places and there were no autopsy reports, or there was no autopsy report, only to find out that there were, which I found to be a shocker, because even Mr. President had waded into this. Anyway, Nana Kwame Bediako unveils presidential bid. 2023 district level elections, representation of women low. That's according to the EC. Restructuring external debt, 2 economists predict growth. And then on the back page, of course, Salah salvages point for Egypt. That was against Mozambique. And government will support Barcelona Kempon partnership. That's according to minister. So the Minister of Youth and Sports, Mustafa Yusuf, has given an assurance that the government would support the proposed partnership between FC Barcelona and the Kempon Football Academy for the identification and development of football talent. The minister made the declaration when the director of scouting for Barcelona, Paulo Araujo, and officials of the academy paid a courtesy call on him at his office in Accra. Mr. Yusuf expressed joy at the visit and described the proposed partnership between Barcelona and Kempon as the citadel of hope for the youth of Ghana. Then we'll look at pages 32 and 33. Nana Kwame Bediako unveils presidential bid. What do you really think about Nana Kwame Bediako? I've had discussions with different people in different spheres of our national life. Former vice chancellors, former independent candidates, lawyers, just over this weekend. I shared and in some groups I am on, with some very intellectual people, luminaries in our country. And I shared my blunt thoughts on Nana Kwame Bediako. But I'd like to find out, how much do you know about him? I found it curious the last time I had an interaction with him, asking him about his source of wealth. And on about 4 occasions, I tried pinning him down. I heard talk about wisdom. So I guess we need a lot more wisdom as young people to get the sort of money he has. But I'd like to find out, what do you make of the man, NKB, Nana Kwame Bediako? You can share your thoughts with me. George, can you hear me now? Mr. Sapon?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. So we've lost out on a few minutes, so I'll just ask that your answers are pretty straight to the point, choppy. I was asking, though, about your quick thoughts about the performance of the Black Stars yesterday. They fell to Cape Verde, probably our easiest match, and it didn't go our way. Quick thoughts, then we get into the papers.
Okay. As for the Black Stars, all of us have our love and our faith in them. And they keep telling us to bring the love back. We brought the love back, but sometimes when it matters most, they fail to rise to the occasion. It's a tournament, and so it's a long one. Let's hope that we can make up for the losses of last night and then go on to make some good progress. I mean, this is not the first time that a country would lose a first match in a tournament and also go on to progress. We saw that with Argentina in the World Cup. They lost their first match against Saudi Arabia. It was a woeful performance, lost by 2-0, I think. But then they went on to win the World Cup. So it's not all lost. I think that Chris Hughton and our boys out there can do some good job. I have a lot of confidence in our players, especially my very own Mohamed Kudus, and the boy from Nima, who is doing an amazing job for West Ham. And so for me, as a football lover, and as someone who enjoys playing football, especially in my constituency, I have a lot of confidence in the Black Stars. Our hope is not lost yet. I think that as a nation, we need to continue burying them up in prayers, giving them our love, giving them all of our support, and ensure that we do some good job for us. Because if it doesn't go well, the nation suffers when it comes to the joy that football brings. Ghana is a football-loving nation, and especially now that we have a group of people who call themselves investors, the effects may be devastating for some people as well. And so for me, I'll continue to support the Black Stars, and I'll crave the indulgence of all Ghanaians to do the same.
All right. So I started with that story about government supporting Barcelona Kempon partnership. That's the sports minister, Mustafa Yusuf. What do you make, though, about Nana Kwame Bediako and the new force? There's a lot of talk about them. I interviewed him just last week, Friday. The billboards are still all over town. Some of them were pulled down, supposedly. The accusation has been that it's been by members of your party. But what do you make of what he's been saying and the fact that things are not going well in our country, for which reason we need someone like him to lead the country to its land flowing with milk and honey? What's your take?
So I am a Democrat. MPP is a democratic party. And then we believe in the plural democracy. We believe in the rule of law. We believe in the multi-party system. And we are believers in the fact that
people should be given options when they go to vote. And that's the more reason why the NPP has consistently campaigned for options when it comes to voting. That even with our internal primaries, we've taken the position where we want everybody who has the will and has the tenacity and is constitutionally has the right to stand elections to do so. And so for me, I do not have any problem with Nana Bediako seeking to be president of Ghana. We have seen independent candidates at the presidential level.
George, I'm not talking so much about I'm not talking so much about his wanting to be president or our democratic process allows that. I'm talking about what he's been saying. And again, about the rot in the system he's pointing to and what you see from there. It's about the idea, what he's conveying. That's what I'm asking about, not the fact that our democratic process allows him to compete.
I think that it is. So, I mean, I was taking it from a perspective to another perspective. I think that we practice a plural democracy, so these things are permissible. And then for anybody who seeks to lead the country as president, it's incumbent on the person to have it where outline his vision, what he feels he can do. And so if anybody who seeks to be president does so, the person has the constitutional right to do so. If you look at Articles 1, 2, and 3, I mean, any individual who is a Ghanaian and all of that, and you go all the way to Articles 13 to 25, there are certain liberties that we all enjoy. And so one of them is freedom of association, all these things. So Nana Bediako has the right to do whatever thing he's doing. He has the right to join the discourse at the national level. And in doing so, for me, I would be proud if we do so at any level, intellectually and constructively. And so for me, I think that I like to give him kudos for even taking that bold step because he's a youth and I'm a youth, so I encourage these things. But the larger question is that he needs to appeal to the Ghanaian people. For me, I joined the vehicle of the New Patriotic Party. I am going to appeal to the larger people on why they need to endorse the NPP one more time. And one of the reasons I'm going to tell the people is that, one, we've kept our lives on and we've not had fluctuations. We've been able to improve education. Now more than 500,000 people are enrolled in free SHS who hitherto will not have had the opportunity on the basis of cost constraints amongst others. We've had improvements in the health sector when it comes to emergency health care. Look at the ambulances we brought. Agenda 111 is on call. And so these are things that I, as a member of the NPP, I'm going to tell the Ghanaian people and ask for their vote. Anybody who seeks to also lead the people has to also bring up his policies such that on the basis of what I think the NPP will do or will continue to do and why they need to vote for Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia to break the age, he, Nana Bediako, can also bring a superior argument. If the Ghanaian people see his argument as superior, I believe they will endorse him. If they think the NPP argument is rather superior, we will be on the way to breaking the age with Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. And so for me, it's not a matter of you just having the war and just throwing in a few political politics here and there, but it is a matter of great tenacity, hard work, and pure tried and tested policies. It's not really something that can be taken lightly. This is governance. Governance is serious business. Governance is a continuum, and it's equally a serious business. So anybody who seeks to be at that level, anybody who wants to be at the helm of affairs of the development of our country, for me, the person needs to tell us exactly what they want to do. And that's the more reason why the MPP, every point in time, we submit our manifesto way ahead of time before any other political party so that the Ghanaian people, the civil society, stakeholders, everybody can subject these things that we brought and we bring out to a certain standard. That we can say that, okay, option A is not permissible because of A, B, C, and D. We think that you can do better with that thing you are saying. We feel that, let's say, free SHS can be done better in this certain way. You remember that when we got the free SHS argument, there are people who got the case of means testing, that those who can afford to be allowed to pay. All these arguments came up because we had brought a policy that had the entire nation, and it was the discussion of the day. And so for me, if Nana Bediako feels that he's ready to be president, let him put a superior argument.
All right. I get you a bit about the superior argument. Just so we can move the conversation forward and not focus on only one point.
Anyone can do that.
George, just so we can move the conversation forward and not focus on only one point. Just quickly, do this very quickly for me. You made mention of the fact that governing a country is very serious business. Honestly, from my standpoint, sometimes I don't see that seriousness from leadership. And I'm not just talking about this administration, but especially with some people in this administration. The other bit, you made a point. You can ignore the first part. You made a point about the freedom of association, but interestingly, on Constitution Day, when Nana Kwame Bediako, it doesn't matter what my thinking is of him, he's a citizen of this land. On the 7th day of this month, Constitution Day, when we were, exalting the 1992 Constitution and remembering it, people with the freedom to associate, gather at the Independence Square for a paid event, 30,000 CDs, were prevented from doing so. What do you think that signals? Very quickly on that, 30 seconds and we move.
Okay, thank you very much. I mean, once you watch this, okay, I have to say good morning to the National Security Coordinator, Mr. George Many, and Minister for National Security, Nobo Kandapa. Thank them for the good job in this country. So, I come to Manchester.
Hello, George. Hello, George Sapon. Okay, the connection had become a bit, I don't know, and this is the problem because when we keep losing them, then you have to go back to the points you were making. George Sapon, can you hear me? All right, we'll try to get the connection back and then go to him. Now, restructuring external debt. 2 economists predict growth. Now, the agreement to restructure the country's $5.4 billion debt owed to external creditors will help to free up some resources for the government to engage in economic activities that will propel growth, 2 economists have said. Of course, I also recall when I was speaking to George Sapong a while ago, he was talking about macro economics or the macro economy and everything. If it doesn't trickle down to the micro, the people are still suffering, no matter what gains you purportedly are making at the macro level. What is macro without the micro? It means nothing, practically. They have said apart from unlocking the release of the second tranche of $600 million from the International Monetary Fund and funding from other development partners, it would also help shore up the country's forex reserves, which would in turn help cushion the local currency. The 2 economists are the director of the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research, Professor Peter Quartey, and the head of research at the Institute of Fiscal Studies, Dr. Saeed Boache. George, you were giving me a very quick response and then I lost you. Please go back.
Yes. So on the matters of security, I think that we have to look at it in the perspective of security. As we sit here today, I have worked with the Ministry of National Security before. So when it comes to these matters, I have a fair idea of how sometimes things play out, and then we can't specifically tell the people what is happening, but you just need to protect them. If you go up north right now, there are operations like Operation Fudango, Operation Conquest Faith, among others, that are being used to protect our territorial integrity. If you go to our border posts like the WAF, among others, there are people trying to get into the country and all of that. There are things that are happening that the leaders of our country cannot come up, organize a press conference and tell people that this is what is happening. All they need to do is to do the job that the Constitution mandates them to do. If you take a look around our country, there's terrorism happening almost everywhere around our country. But then it is the duty of our duty bearers to ensure that we are safe and we can go soundly to bed. It is not up to them to come and tell us that, okay, today there are some terrorism activities happening here, so everybody go inside or whatever it is. All they have to do is to do the job we have given them. Currently, there have been instances where we've had terrorism close to our Ghanaian border, as close as 20 kilometers. But these are matters that are not in the public domain, but these are matters that Ghanaian security agencies have taken the necessary steps to avert all unforeseen occurrences. Currently, there is something we call the Ankrah initiative, where 7 countries have put themselves together for intelligence sharing. They are doing all these things because they need to be able to, in a quick way, respond to certain threats. If national security sees something as a threat, if the Ministry of Interior sees something as a threat, if the Ghana Armed Forces, their defense intelligence, BNI, and all the other agencies, if they see any threat, it is incumbent on them, and the Constitution mandates them to quickly solve it. It is not a matter
George, for the sake of time, let me just say that we still do not know. We still do not know what threat this posed. I mean, people launch political parties and movements all the time. We were also told that there was an event, state event, that was to be held that day. That event was never held. We've not been told about any such threat. So what exactly are you referencing?
What I can tell you is that with my experience and with what I know in matters of security, whenever there is any form of threat, whatever the state has to do...
Okay, so you're putting it down to a threat.
The state has to do it.
Right. You're putting it down to some threat.
I think that the state was right in doing so.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Political party activities that had been called off because of an eminent threat. So, I think that the Minister for National Security and his coordinator were right in doing what they did.
All right, we still wait to find out what the threat is. Maybe, hopefully, the National Security Ministry. Like I said, it may not necessarily be that my thinking is that Nana Kwame Bediako is this or that. I don't really care. But every citizen is a citizen. And what rights they have, they have. If we impinge on them, you must show why we did this. That is what happens in the jurisdictions we go and borrow from, the same ones we seek to emulate. But Joyce Lintete adjudged Best Female MP. The NDC Member of Parliament for North Dai in the Volta region has been adjudged the Best Female MP for 2023 by the Facts Performance of Ministers Project. I highlight these because, one, we need more women in politics, and two, because it is crucial to have these metrics so that we can salute those who are in some way doing a good job and to whip up interest for those who are not doing the best of jobs. Government maintains 13 allowances for UTAG and TUTAG, and there's been a lot of talk about UTAG and TUTAG embarking on an industrial action recently. But Ekumfi Asaman Chidomhema demands Mills's autopsy report. I'll just summarize it for you. I find it very interesting because I followed this entire thing. So there was some meeting with Kwaku Anyidoho and some purported members of the, I wouldn't say the Atta Mills family, right? And I say purported because when Dr. Samuel Atta Mills spoke, he asked certain questions. Now, they had a confab with Mr. President. Mr. President was asking, in a way, about the autopsy report for the late President Mills. May his soul rest in peace. Then there was Kwaku saying that there's no such autopsy report, but his brother, Dr. Samuel Atta Mills, had claimed at a point that he had it. Atta Mills came and said, listen, what is being discussed here? The autopsy report we have as a family, we got from both the AMA. In fact, the AMA has a copy. The 37 Military Hospital has a copy. I find it interesting that Mr. President didn't know about this, or whether he relied solely on what Kwaku and the rest had said, because I don't get the disconnect. We all know the processes to be gone through. He also questioned those purported people who were there in the name of the family when he, Dr. Samuel Atta Mills, was not in the know. Do you have any quick response on this? And some have also questioned why this comes up every electoral year. Your thinking. What's your thought?
So me, personally, I'm an Asante, and some of these matters are quite delicate. What I would say is that both the family and all interest parties need to find a way of putting this to bed permanently, because it helps no one. There are more important matters that we should be focusing on as a nation. There are issues of...
There are more important matters? George Sapong, I get your point, but Mr. President has waded into the matter. That's what it's been trending. So if there were more important matters, which to some extent I agree with you on, I don't know.
You are not getting my address. You are not getting my address.
All right, go ahead, explain.
As a country, both the family and the rest of us, we need to permanently put this to bed so that we can focus on other important matters. Because we cannot keep discussing the death of Professor Mills year on year. If it's about the autopsy report whatsoever, if it's about the presence of it or the absence of it, we need to get to a point where these matters are dealt with, and we know that we've put it behind us as a country, and then the good old professor can rest in peace.
George Sapol,
so when we have done that,
we know where autopsy reports are, where we can get them. My surprise is that as a state, if we don't know where to go and we come into the public domain talking about some of these things, I don't know. That's my concern, because I do agree with you. There are crucial areas we should be looking at. The economy is where it is. Our electricity supply is where it is. But it keeps coming up. And interestingly, it's usually in an electoral year that some of these things really ramp up. That's my concern. Are you concerned about that?
I share your sentiments. I'm concerned too. But then for me, I'm a bit disinterested in such matters. But I feel that as a nation, looking at the time that Professor Mills died, this is not a matter that we should be discussing at the national level at this point. I mean, we should have been able to deal with the issues that connected with Professor Mills' death by this point. I mean, we've had anniversaries for him. We've set up. We've seen a setup that is supposed to institutionalize his memory and all of that. So at this point, we should be moving on to other matters. So that probably when it gets to his birthdays, we discuss his legacies amongst other things. And rather, we channel our energies to what I consider more important matters like education, energy, the economy, our health sector. And as we are in the political year, we should be focusing on what political parties say they will do, and subject them to a litmus paper or a litmus test where we can say that, okay, this is thing that you say you do, it does not look possible or it is possible based on a certain standard or best practices. And so for me, that is where I would like our arguments to be driven.
And I agree with you to a large extent. Thank you very much. Let me just wrap, and we'll wrap with these stories. Elephants devour Guinea-Bissau in AFCON 2023 opener. They beat them by 2-0. Osimhen rescues point for Super Eagles against Equatorial Guinea. It was a barren draw. Well, not barren in the sense of no scoring of goals, but 1-1. Of course, there was also this, there's this story. Quick Credit disburses 1.7 billion Ghana cedis to support businesses. Nidodu Clote, family of Pokwasi, appoints new head of family. We've initiated policies to reduce cost of doing business, promote investor confidence. That's according to Mr. President, and that's in the Ghanaian Times newspaper. The Daily Guide also captures the Mills family demand for an autopsy report. The questions have been raised about which members of the family these are. Obo pushes for Asante Akim South MPP slot. You remember him? Obo. He's with the Ghana Post now. Losing old hands will affect Parliament's minority. Losing old hands will affect Parliament. That's according to the minority. And of course, we know the likes of Joe Gate, Oseiche Mensah Bonsu, among others, Samuel Atachia, are moving on. Otumfuo charges police over election 2024, urging them to give it their best shot. And that is it, basically, from the major papers. There's also this one. Baumia Samira mourn with family of bodyguard. We know over the weekend that accident that happened, and unfortunately, this bodyguard lost his life. Any final thoughts? And then, Mr. Sapol, we can call it a wrap.
My brother, my condolences to the family of the bodyguard of our first and second lady and our first lady. My best wishes to them. These are trying times, and it's my prayer that the good Lord will console them and that He will keep them and will help them go through these challenging times. My final words to my constituents, the good people of Efija Kwabre South, especially the delegates who are going to vote on the 27th. For me, I feel that 27th is a choice between competence and any other option. 27th is a choice between new energy and new vibrance, and somebody who will be able to go to the grassroots and go to the very, very basics of our constituency to convert for vote. It is a choice for a mobilizer. It's a choice for somebody who will help Dr. Baumia bring the aid. It's a choice for somebody who will be able to serve you well, the sensitivity of life, and be able to rise to the occasion when it matters most. And for me, that choice is between George Sapon and nobody else. When you go to the polls, just pick the number one on the ballot, and I believe that it is a choice that we'll never regret. For me, I'm putting myself up to serve my people. Help me serve you. My delegates, help me serve the people. And let's get somebody that I'm voting for and will not cause any voter apathy. So it is a choice that will help go a long way to contribute to the electoral forces of the NPP. We know that the Ashanti region is the heart of the party. The Efija Kwabre South is also part of the big constituency giving NPP food. We have the 6th largest population in the Ashanti region. And so, vote for John Sapon to harness these votes, to enhance the electoral forces of the NPP in the region, to go a long way to affect the national output of the NPP. And for me, I feel that when that happens, we'll all come back here and we'll be beaming with smiles.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sapong, for joining the conversation this morning. George Sapong is the MPP's parliamentary candidate, hopeful for Efija Kwabre South. He joined the conversation with us this morning. Right before we veer into sports, and there's a lot of action, there's a lot to talk about. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic helping, as always, to bring you this segment. They're offering you, if you're a man, prostate screening for free. If you're a woman, fertility screening for free. Locate them here in Accra at Sprintex opposite the Shell signboard. Kumasi, Kronoma Bwehia behind the Angel Educational Complex, Takrade, Anaji State, Tema Community 22, Techiman Hanso and Esiamanzama. Their call lines 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. Well, we'll be bringing you talk in sports, what happened all the way from the AFCON, all the action coming your way up next in Sports Tuesday. Welcome back on the AM show. After the sports, yes, we're going to be focusing on, well, our national life, other aspects of our national life. And today we're hosting a man who has done many things, but I'll leave him to explain to us who exactly he is. He is a presidential candidate. At least he wants to be that going into election 2024. I don't know for certain because, of course, there are processes to go through with the Electoral Commission and everything. But he wants to be president. This morning, we're going to be probing him on why. Remember the last time I hosted Nana Kwame Bediako? Today, we're hosting Dr. Sam Ankrah, and he wants to be president. Good morning, Dr. Ankrah. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me, Ben.
Before I get into the meat of the matter, I'd like to find out from you. Who is Dr. Sam Ankrah? Who are you?
Dr. Sam Ankrah is just a humble young man who has been in the finance and economics business for a while. I worked as an investment banker and basically raising capital for corporations and for government. I've also graduated from there as working on economic policies and advice to our country and basically advising corporations. So not to bore you with so many detailed stuff or being going outboard, in summary, this is who Sam Ankrah is in economic and finance business.
Okay, so economics and finance, and that's interesting because those are some of the areas where Ghana is hemorrhaging. And there's so much talk about the economy and the status of our finances. You've spoken about your experience in all of these fields. I'd like to find out from you, why do you want to become president of Ghana?
Very good question, and I suppose a lot of people have asked this question, why would you want to leave your lifestyle? Why would you want to get yourself into the frail of this?
In other words, why do you want to leave the peace? And
exactly.
Get into, as we say here, not violence, violence, because it comes with a lot of, that. Why do you want to forfeit your peace?
It's on different folds. Number one is a passion for people. They're just real passion and desire for people to uplift social mobility from where they are in their lifestyle and circumstances is what drives me. But more importantly, I also think the middle class, people, the skilled aspect of our community have failed this country because we've stayed in the fence and allowed certain things to go on, which I believe we could have gotten involved to help because of exactly what you just said. The violence and the aggressiveness of the nature of the political arena that we find ourselves in. But it gets to a point, or it gets to a time where somebody has to leave for something. A generation has to fight for the next generation. And I believe that is done on me at the stage to offer myself, put myself on the altar of sacrifice to make sure things are done properly so that we can create a path, we can create prosperity for all, and also leave a good legacy for the generations behind us.
You talk about putting yourself on the altar of sacrifice. As far as this Fourth Republican experience has been, I believe as a student of politics, among others, it is clearly the people who end up sacrificing for leaders all the time and not the other way around. You would see in other jurisdictions that leaders actually do sacrifice. Of course, they get the perks, they get certain benefits of leadership, but in the end, they are the ones who sacrifice their time. You would see that often. Look at Obama when he came to power, and within a short while, all his hair had gone gray. These people are not joking. There's a lot of work to be done. So you say you're putting yourself on the altar of sacrifice. That has not been the tale of the tape in our country, and I shudder to believe whether you would be able to change that.
Ben, honestly speaking, that is a narrative that we want to change. Politics has to benefit people. We're sick and tired of leaders taking advantage of the people, getting into government to prosper themselves and their immediate family at the expense of the entire nation. We're sick and tired of a system where people loyalty are to political parties instead of a nation as a whole. So these are the basic things that are moving people like me to get involved into politics. I'm not a politician. In fact, I hated politics. But as I said to you earlier, I sit back, I have the passion for people, I have the know-how given the opportunity, so I don't see the reason why we can't get into the fray and help make the right things done. So, like you rightly said, those are the critical issues that needs to be changed. Being in leadership is service to a nation. It's not lauding or ruling. It's service. You're serving the people. So it's a kind of service that we want to make sure that we bring back into our system where our political systems and governance structures work well for the benefit of the ordinary Ghanaian and not just a little few that gets the opportunity to run the country.
I see. And how are you going to implement such an agenda? It's good to speak about it. It's definitely laudable to talk about changing leadership, providing service leadership. You actually remind me of the Greek city-states and their philosophy of, if pun not intended, a philosopher king. In other words, a king, ruler, but who is also a philosopher, has depth of mind, is intellectual, okay? But in this instance, I ask you, it takes more than just one person. We have had leaders, even the likes of former President John Evans Atta Mills, that some felt was, morally speaking, probably the best we've had in quite a while, if for nothing, in this Fourth Republic. The people that surround such a leader are the crucial cogs that will determine how the wheel or where it rolls. So I'll put that question back to you again. Is this a one-man agenda? How can you execute this, especially considering, and I'll get to the bit about fielding parliamentary candidates. I don't know whether you're fielding any, but when there are talks about independent candidates, I often ask, should you get the nod, how will you govern this country?
Right. I mean, it starts from the point, first of all, let us diffuse the mindset where we think it cannot be done.
No, it's not about it cannot be done. It's about how will it be done.
It will be done, and it can be done, and we need to have that confidence. That is a hope I'm bringing to my fellow Ghanaians, that there's a possibility and a way an independent candidate can run this country. Yes, we're going to field independent candidates across. However, worst case scenario, if we don't get the numbers that we're looking for, the Constitution is very clear. It says that you have to, it appoint ministers from Parliament. It didn't say you have to appoint your ministers. So we're going to use NDC, MPP, CPP, every party representative in Parliament to run this country. The motion is that we're building a country devoid of political colors and symbols. We want to use right Ghanaians with the right skills to develop and build this nation. The systems that we have become dysfunctional. It's broken. It requires some sort of skills to break it down and rebuild. Let me give you a scenario. It's like you have a house with a dysfunction where you know the house within a certain period is going to break down. It's going to break down and collapse. Would you want to keep putting cosmetic stuff there just to keep it going, or you want to break it down totally and rebuild again? It's that kind of rebuild that we are calling for Ghana. We've realized that if we continue going where we are going now, it will get to a point where we will not even have a country. So I am making a clarion call to Ghanaians. I'm making a clarion call to all right-thinking Ghanaians that, look, the systems and structures that we have at this point would not take us to where we want to be as a nation. It requires breaking it down and putting in structures that will stand the test of time and for generations to come. It's the systems that will help us to build prosperity and not to build a little cabal for people that gets into governance. So it's a comprehensive exercise we are calling to do, and it doesn't require one person. We have a solid team. People under normal circumstances who wouldn't want to be even in politics are looking to say, if this opportunity is created, they are happy to throw their hearts in the ring and support us to build this nation. This is what we require as a country, where all our experts, all our resources are put on the frail to help build a nation for all to benefit.
I'll go back to that bit you said about, yes, you are mandated to elect ministers from Parliament. Not all of them.
Yeah.
There's a quota, there's a percentage. And so what happens to the rest? And what if, you see, the point is, you can even stick to those frameworks, if you like. These parties will not necessarily work in your favor, and that's another thing. You know, people have said, and there's political history is replete with examples. If you remember, at the initial stages of the Professor Atta Mills election, right, in 2008, in the first part, before the runoff, he had actually lost the presidential election by
a margin.
Then it was realized by the people that the NDC had won the majority in Parliament, which meant, technically, that they would frustrate the MPP if their presidential candidate, then Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, got the nod. And so later, the Tyne constituency became the deciding factor, the kingmaker, if you like. And that was how the election swung. And I say this because back then you would interact with people and they would say, nah, you know, once they have the majority, no, it's not going to work. And you can just imagine, even in this instance, for example, the NDC, if they had got the majority versus the MPP now, look at what a struggle it has been for the MPP in governance. So I really don't, how are you going to be able to marshal those forces?
Honestly, that is what the country needs. I think the decision or the idea at the time that if NPP had won and they wouldn't have had a majority in Parliament, and as a result they should put NDC through, was a wrong notion. At the moment we're having challenges where the president has too much power. Most of the corruption that we're facing at the moment, which is a canker eating into our society, which has impeding upward mobility and exacerbating income inequalities and all of the mess, the country not being affordable, is because of corruption. People are having monies they haven't really worked for in their hands. And basically when that happens, the whole economy gets into shambles. We'll talk about how severe corruption has gotten into our economy and is affecting us. So we need to have separation of powers and checks and balances. That was a natural one in the bidding. Clearly, if our votes had landed MDC to take over majority and MPP in Parliament, that's the legislature, and MPP to be the executive, I think that was a very good idea, and that was a very good plan. As to why people thought that wasn't good and they had to give the power back to the NDC or MPP was wrong. We need to separate powers. We need to have checks and balances. These are very good for our first building our democracy and also for our economy. We need to check on each other. If you don't have these sort of checks and balances, separation of powers in place, this is what leads to corruption, as I said earlier. So the idea that NPP needed to have majority in Parliament for them to vote for them and so forth, it's neither here nor there. And I don't think what thinking that went into. But clearly, it was the best thing for the country at the time. What we're going through now is one of the best experiences where an executive cannot just bring policies or bring a budget and expect a rubber stamp in Parliament. You expect people to scrutinize you. You expect people to look through these documents and make sure that things are done properly. And that is exactly what is going on. So I think that notion, whether we have majority in Parliament or not, it's not really the case. It's about having efficient government systems. It's having transformative leadership that would take over and bring the right policies that would change the destiny of the nation. It's not really about the structures of who is in charge or who is not there. Talking about they're going to give us problems in Parliament, we're building a people's government. If we bring policies, if we bring programs that would change the destinies of our people, and somebody sits in Parliament and frustrated because he's a member of a certain party, he doesn't want the government to succeed, we're coming back right at your yard, calling for town hall meetings in your community and telling your locals exactly what this policy is going to affect their lifestyle. And if you are not careful, you're sitting there, they're voting against you the next time because they know you are not helping them. So it's going to be a people's government.
It's going to take 4 years for that to happen, for them to go back to the ballot, for people to not vote for them. In the interim, those 4 years, you would have to do work. You would practically be walking a bit, pardon my, naked. They wouldn't cooperate with you. Everything would come to a standstill. You know how crucial Parliament is in all of this. The executive is powerful because we've made it that way. And I'll come to you shortly on some other constitutional points. But with Parliament frustrating your work, government business, your hands would practically be tied. You'll be forced to do things you probably don't want to do.
Well, I believe everybody that goes into Parliament, and to be honest, let's give credit. The politicians currently in the helms of affairs want to do the right things. However, wanting to do the right things and doing the right things are different. So the fact that at the moment they are going ahead on what they are doing is because of the chief whips whipping them, because policies are coming from executive which necessarily they are happy with, but they can't really vote against because they are more loyal to their party before the country. So once you have a government that is neutral from them and initiating the right policies, that part is sorted. They will find it very difficult to sit in there and stop or block policies that will change the destiny of the nation.
I honestly beg to differ. It goes back to the point about the absence of war not necessarily being peace. People think once war is absent, it means peace. The mere fact that either one of these parties may not be in power, but they want to consolidate whatever they've gained in Parliament, among others. I mean, we've seen areas where some people have had cause to believe that even when it suits them, they band together, even as what's the word, polarized as they may be on different matters. When it suits them, they band together. I mean, it will be very easy for these two political parties to band together when it's their interest against, someone who is working against what they feel is their interest.
Well, I mean, again, we're speculating here, and it's not the actual...
No, things have happened in the past that have pointed in that direction.
The reason why this has happened in the past is because we have two protagonists, two main political parties who think it has to be us or theirs. But when they realize the Ghanaians have become very more discerning, and they don't want any of these two parties in power because of what they have done, and as such voted for a neutral leader to take over, I think the awareness would come and say, hey guys, let's sit up and do the right things, because if we don't, people are watching us, and that is why an independent party with no, not many parliamentarians have taken over the country, and if we don't take care, all of us, our parties are going to go down. So that at that point, it becomes a matter of how do we sustain our political parties and making sure they follow the right processes and help us to implement our program, which we want to use to take the turn around the country. We can't continue like this as a country. We need to be serious as people and start implementing programs and policies that will change our country. We can't just leave and one party takes over a cabal, just themselves and few others enrich themselves, they leave, the other one takes over, and Ghanaians are getting poorer and poorer by the day. Look, this can't continue, and our people are getting discerning by the day. I've been around the country, I've been going around to the very remote parts of the nation, and people are complaining because politics have not changed their lifestyle. Politics for the last 30 years had not brought anything different from how they were living before. Is that how we want to continue as a nation? We can't continue like that. So if Ghanaians at this point feels an independent candidate is the right person to lead the nation, and they give that person the permission and the authority to do so, I suppose everybody is going to be whipped online to do the right thing.
You speak about differences, so the differentiator. I'm going to put it to you. I mean, there are the likes of, in the past, we've had the Kofi Kurantings, we've had the Marek Kofi Gans, we've had so many people. Currently, there's Alan Tremanting, who has, started his movement, and we know of many other people, Nana Kwame Bediako, among others. My question to you is, what makes you stand out? What makes you think you're better than all of these people, better suited to lead Ghana? What makes you stand out?
Our country is in a mess, economic mess. It requires skillful hands to straighten things up, and with a will to do so.
You've never been president before. You've
I'm coming. You've mentioned names previously, and who had tried, but we've never gotten to this time in our economy. Our country has never been like this before. The time is now for us to bring skillful hands, people with the know-how of exactly what the problem is, to get involved and resolve the situation. As I said earlier, the idea of political parties and popularities and so forth would not solve our problems if we don't start bringing practical people in the equation. So I am saying the time is now. Years ago, what might have worked is not working now. When Ghana was bidding for independence, it hadn't happened in the history of our country before. No country in Africa had independence. But with
Sub-Saharan Africa.
Sub-Saharan Africa, sorry. But with determination, hard work, and perseverance, they were able to secure that. The same thing falls on us now. And again, I'm making a clarion call to all these our people out there that we've gotten into a time in our history that will require a second independence, second economic recovery, where we can set up structures and systems that would work, because our current systems, although might have worked before, has become dysfunctional. It's not working anymore, and we need to change it. We can't continue the cosmetic work, and it starts from our voting. Vote for an independent candidate, Sam Ankrah. Let's get involved. Let's take over the helms of affairs, break down the system, rebuild the system with a rule of law, with sound economic policies, continuous fights against corruption, and bring stability into the country.
Tell me, your campaign has been launched, right?
Yes, the campaign has been. We've started.
Because I know in November last year.
Yes, we've postponed the date for the grand rally to open the campaign. But yes, we've started. We're campaigning, but we're hopefully on the 14th of February we're targeting to have the outdooring of the launch, a big rally where we will outdoor our people, we will outdoor our detailed policy, radical policies that are going to turn this country around for Ghanaians to see this. This is a real alternative. When we come out, when Ghanaians see the holistic view of what we intend to bring, people are going to sit back and take us serious.
All right. Tell me, what do you have? Is it a movement? Is it a political party? What is it? And what do you call it?
It's a movement. We're Alternative for Action Movement, AFA.
Alternative for Action Movement.
Yeah, so it's AFA. We're a movement. We're not a political party. Anybody can join and be a member. Whether MPP, NDC, CPP, GCPP, everyone can join and help us for once and for all end this status quo and bring in a system that would help build our nation.
Are you going to retain this up to election 2024? Basically, what I'm asking you is, have you had interactions with the Electoral Commission? You know, eventually you must go through that process. I don't know, with all these movements springing up, because when you look at the letter of the Constitution, it talks about political parties. I don't know how this will end up for all the movements that are springing up. But do you have any plans of making this alternative action movement a political party? Have you engaged the Electoral Commission?
Honestly speaking, with the philosophy that we're pushing, we don't intend to ever be a political party. Ghanaians don't need another political party. They are looking for selfless, transformative leadership. And that is what we're bringing on the table. It's not about the colors. It's not about the symbols. Right now, you've heard people talking about bringing tribalism into politics and saying this region is for this part of the people. Look, we need people that would build Ghana. We don't care where they're coming from, whether they're green or white or yellow. We want people that would come and put policies and be firm on it. Political will that can change our destiny. We're sick and tired of all these cabals and these favoritisms and lack of meritocracy in the society and all these things that had helped corrupted and brought our country to its knees. We need to change it, and that requires a movement like ours, devoid of all these colors and symbols or affiliations or whatever, to change the country and turn the country around.
I'm just concerned, though, about the script. What the Electoral Commission works with is the law, as much as possible. And our Constitution talks about political parties. There's no talk about movements. So I'm just asking you, based on the letter of the Constitution, and I'm asking this also because you do know that prior to every election, a number of political parties or entities or candidates are not allowed to compete on certain grounds. So I'm asking you whether you've taken a look at all of these dimensions and where you sit now, you feel comfortable enough. Political parties are required to have offices in every region, offices in the districts, among others. If you claim you're a movement, I don't know how that applies to you. I don't know how you're going to be on the ballot. I'm just asking whether your team has looked into some of these.
We've done extensive research before even I decided to contest or put my head on the ring to do this work. First of all, we're not going into the election as a movement. Okay. We're going into an election as an independent candidate, Sam Ankrah, with the support of his people in the various constituencies.
Okay. Do you have offices in the districts?
For an independent candidate, I don't necessarily have to have offices in the district. However, we want to make sure we run and operate and have efficiency on the grassroots. So we're building offices across every polling station to the top.
Do you have offices in the regions?
Yes, absolutely. We're building, as I said, that's part of our campaign strategy to make sure that we have presence from every polling station.
Okay, so you are up to a certain point. I don't know when, but tell me, by what time will you have offices in all the regions?
By the end of this quarter, we should be everywhere.
All right, so by end of April?
Absolutely. Once we outdoor our what do you call it, campaign, and we showcase our talents that we're going to bring on this country and our policies, it will go hand in hand concurrently with showcasing our offices and with grassroots operations.
Running a political campaign in Ghana is very cost intensive. One billboard can cost you a ton of money. How are you funding your campaign?
It's a people party, it's a people government. If Ghanaians really want this change that they are looking for, if the profession of change and the noise in the streets is anything to go by, then I'm respectfully asking people to put money where their mouth is. It's going to be grassroots contribution for everybody. Your city, your 5 cities, your 10 cities. My money that we put in is what is going to run this campaign. We're not going to be run by any interest group. Let's get that noted. We don't care who they are and how big size of money they would bring on the table. For the purposes of what we are doing, making sure that we are creating an economy for Ghanaians and certain things that are going on which are not right, we forbid from taking any money from any interest group. It's going to be our campaign, Ghanaians' campaign, his money, your money, 5 cities, students, 10 cities, 2 cities. It's what is going to move this campaign for us to win the elections.
So far, based on what sorts of funding have you used to roll the campaign so far? So far, you've not had that. You've had a bit of a launch, but not the proper outdooring, which you're doing later this year. So how have you been funding your activities?
It's been done self-funded. Like I said, I have put most of my money into it so far. And basically, as I said, going forward, we have a strategy to do crowdfunding, to do fundraising across the nation. Once our message goes out to our people and they understand exactly what we intend to do, people won't have a stake in that kind of government that would come and turn their destinies around.
All right. So here's a script that I see many candidates, especially those wanting to go independent, reading from. You can differ if you, but I've interacted with a number of them, and all of them come and say, oh, we're going to do crowdfunding. We're going to come to you for 1 city, 5 cities, or whatever you can contribute. There's a limited pool of Ghanaians. That's one. And these are harsh economic times. I'm wondering whether all of you are reaching out to different pools of Ghanaians. There's only one set of Ghanaians. There's only one set of Ghanaians who will vote a certain limited millions in terms of number. So tell me, again, how exactly you mean to roll this. And I'm tying it to 2 things. One, our Constitution talks about political party financing and certain strict rules and regulations, which we know some parties are not going by. I don't want to mention names, but they are not going essentially by them. That in itself borders on criminality. The second bit is, it's been said in some research pieces that to become president in this country, you require as much as $100+ million.
Yeah.
Staggering, startling, mind-blowing. Do you think you can amass $100 million to roll a campaign against the juggernauts of the MPP and the NDC, especially as an independent candidate?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I did mention to you, I'm an investment banker. I worked as an investment banker. The main objective of an investment banker is raising funding for a right cause. If we have the right cause, which we do, if we have the right message, which we do, we will find the money to support that to make it happen.
How? Crowdfunding?
Absolutely. Like I said, speaking to the right people about the right programs, because look, Ghanaians are tired. So if we cannot amass that money to run our campaign, then we can't run the nation. If we're looking to have at least 7 million votes to win the election, we should be able to tax this civilian mode to put their stake into what they believe in to get us to win these elections.
I see. So as far as you're concerned, you can raise $100 million.
Absolutely. What else wouldn't have even got started in the first place? I'm sitting here spending some very, very valuable times doing what I'm doing rather than being out work chasing for money. Clearly, it should tell you that the guy is serious and he knows what he's about. We know exactly what we're doing, and we're certain that we would raise the money and push and win these elections, God willing.
I see. Let's look at different aspects of our national life and how you mean to impact. I'm sure people want to hear you speak on different aspects. I'm talking about the economy, agriculture, health, infrastructure, roads. So let's start with the economy. You know exactly where we find ourselves.
Absolutely.
We have a program which the IMF is helping us execute. On the back of that program, we've suffered different, I don't want to call them consequences, but you've seen the rollover of taxes nowadays. Now, the latest we've seen, electricity tariffs, even for residential users, are going to be impacted by value-added tax. That's already, quite a bit because businesses and residential users are already complaining about high utility tariffs. That's one. Inflation is where it is. Year on year is going down, month on month is going up, heading north. The cost of living is very high. You would have interactions with government functionaries and they would tell you that, the CD is relatively stable. The highest it hit was around 16 plus against the dollar. Now we are looking at 12 plus. It's stable, but it's still very high. So when you look at the metrics, on the macro level, we have made some minimal gains. On the micro level, people are still feeling the pinch, okay? What are you going to do differently in the midst of an IMF program for the people of Ghana?
Excellent. Look, I did mention to you that our systems need to be broken down and rebuilt, especially our economic systems. We need to create economic models that speaks to our Ghanaian experiences. The structures that we have mostly is colonial inherited, and nothing has been done about it. Let's stop making noise. Let's stop the cosmetic work and address the issue head on. If you have a government of this size and you look at your revenue and you still maintain that, that is what is going to cause you to increase taxes and find avenues where you're not supposed to raise money. Look, we can't continue with this size of government. UK, as huge as it is, with their GDP as massive as it is, has only 350,000 government workers, a population of about 65 million. Ghana, only 31 million. Yet we have over 1 million government employees, and we keep piling on. How can we sustain that? Government size needs to be cut. What else? Have they stopped using the Land Cruisers, the gas-absorbing Land Cruisers across the nation where every department and whatever gets all these
agency
and so forth?
Office of the President.
Cuts the waste. Look, we need to cut costs. There's a basic say, not even in economics, in a regular life, we call it, or social economic, that you need to spend what you have. We don't spend what we are having. We're continuously borrowing to come and pay recurrent expenditure, and we're expected to get out of these doldrums. No, we can't. Somebody needs to tell us in our face. So I said the policies and programs that we're bringing, as radical as it may be, is going to cause a bit of difficulty. It's not going to be rosary for everyone. But we need to take these harsh decisions now, or else it will come back and haunt us. As the earlier we take it, the better. The issue with a case study with Germany after the Second World War, where they came back together as a country and rebuilt their economy. And now look at Germany. Japan, after the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, coming back together to rebuild their economy. Ghana is more or less at the same position. We need to take the radical decisions. Cut government size as much as possible, 50% I propose. Build the private sector, do you know how much money that saving can do for the nation in terms of building infrastructure, healthcare, agriculture, education? Look, we need to take the radical decisions, and that is one of them. Talking about stability, we don't have an economy. Anything happens outside, the country is in trouble. Ukraine war, we are complaining. What do you call it? We have problems with shipping companies or containers. It affects us because we are importing everything, even toothpicks. Why are we not creating local economy? How should a country like Ghana, with such arable lands around us and great talent and unemployed youth, should be importing toothpicks and intestines for goats and cows and so forth?
Are you then in support of the imports bill that was being planned, which said that would just cut off all of these and try and, adopt homegrown policies? Are you for that?
Absolutely. We will restructure it and frame it in a better way, because we have to use fiscal policies to change the behavioral patterns of our people, even including our consumption patterns. We need to change these things. So yes, I'm in favor of it, but it has to be in a holistic way where Ghanaians would benefit from it.
But you're also aware, and I have to interject, for those of you who watch sometimes and feel I interject at certain points, is because I don't want anything to be swept under the carpet. You do realize as well that per the bill that went before Parliament, it gave overweening powers to the Minister for Trade and Industry. He would determine a certain number of things. People felt it was a recipe for corruption disaster.
Absolutely.
And two, the whole thing about we're letting go, and when your production is, let's say, 2 and your consumption is 10, and you say you're letting go, how do you fill the gap? It doesn't happen automatically. So are you subscribing to the model as proposed by the minister, or you have a different model?
We have a different model. Obviously, anything that has to go through a human channel model, a body to determine who imports, is clearly going to be tantamount to corruption. What we are saying is already we know the importers are importing these things. So if we're saying from next year, 2025 to 2026, we want 50% imports. That means everyone in the industry will still have to import, but they have to reduce the amount of importation.
Right.
And basically, and we are looking to help local. So then the next year, 2026 to 2027, we say 70%. We'll carry on to a point where we can phase out completely and there's no imports coming into the country. So that is what we intend to do, supporting homegrown policies, making sure that we develop homegrown agricultural policies, go on a serious mechanized farming to feed our people and to feed our neighbors as well. And again, with the currency fluctuation, I started talking about this way before one Prof. Hines got involved. Japan did it. China did it. UAE done it. We need to peg our currency to bring stability to the market for a period. It gives a psychological view to people. If you sit in here, Ben, and you know that your $10 is worth $10 5 years later, you would not be rushing to go into the forest or the black market to save money in dollars and so forth. So I have been proposing that for us to gain stability in the economic situation and also control the inflation, because a lot of the currency fluctuation brings a lot of inflation, which we're going to talk about later. Let's peg our currency for a period and bring stability to the market so that at least you know that the pen that I'm buying is 5 cedis. 10 years later, or 5 years later, I'm still paying the same amount of money. So I'm talking about pegging here, and we can go into details exactly how that can be done. And we talked about creating employment for our young people. Again, the amount of young people that comes out on a yearly basis, even talking about those from the education system alone, is unbelievable, over hundreds of thousands of them. And yet there are no avenues. If you talk about those who are not in employment, not in education, and not in any sort of training, again, that's over 1 million people. How are we going to sustain that? Create apprenticeship. Have a proper policy that makes sure that you feed these guys as a real working job, not just put them into camps and say, I'll put you into 6 months program, a NACOP or YouTube, you have to go out there and fend for yourself. That is not it. Give them real skill, real tool. And I'm talking about apprenticeship where you are a quantity surveyor. I put about 15 young people to work under you for a period of, say, 5 years, depending on how quick they learn. And then the government pay salaries of these young men understudying you. When they finish, they also open their outlets. And you realize that it mutates. It's creating real employment, hand-on employment. So these are the sort of innovations and creativity that we're going to bring on board.
Just so we can make tracks. Quick one, though. You mentioned the number of people that government employs and all of that. How many ministers do you think you can work with?
20.
20 ministers?
Listen, Norway, with a GDP of over 600 billion, has 17 ministers. Netherlands, GDP of 570 billion.
Are these ministers who will double as regional ministers or something?
We're not going to use regional ministers. There will be one government in charge of local government and rural development. That minister will take care of all the DCEs. DCEs will be elected. So we're going to decentralize government, make sure that politics is felt at the grassroots. DCEs are elected and they report.
Yeah, but in the interim, before you get DCEs or MCEs elected, there will be a gap. How will you fill that gap?
Well, I mean,
because when you come, these are policy proposals, and you see we've gone down this road before,
absolutely,
and government had to back down. So, in the interim, how are you going to run the districts?
It's like I said, all these things have to be phased out, like any other project where a new project comes to phase out the existing one. There has to be a plan and a program and a timelines. So we are going to bring outdoor that program that would gradually phase out the existing one and implement, we believe, from our structures, after the first year or so, we should be able to implement and execute exactly what we're looking to do as a government.
How do you mean to tame the monster of corruption?
That's a big elephant in the room. But corruption can be tamed. Checks and balances, separation of powers, as I said earlier.
We have them. We have them already.
We don't.
They are not working.
We don't. If you have the president appointing the chief justice, if you're the president appointing the, the IGP, the president appointing everybody, you don't tell me you have appointing parliamentarians to be ministers. You're not telling me you have checks and balances.
He is doing that, and for now it's all been but he is doing that based on the Constitution. That's what the Constitution mandates.
Absolutely. So we'll come back to that. But before we change the Constitution, there has to be selflessness in our leadership to give power and room to various institutions to function on their own, and which we don't have now. But the Constitution will come to it, but we need to...
Let's go to it, because time is limited, yeah. But let's go to it. What will you do with the Constitution?
It needs to be reviewed.
It needs to be reviewed?
A lot needs to change.
Have you read the contents of the 2010 Constitutional Review Commission's work? Have you read it?
I haven't read it into detail, but I have a fair idea exactly what they're proposing.
Do you subscribe to some of those changes?
I subscribe to most of them.
Like which ones?
Like talking about separating the president from electing the chief justices, what I just said. Article 71.
Office
holders being scrapped, because again, single spine for other people, Article 71, that's the first form of discrimination anyway, which we can talk about. So all those ones I think is very important. I think the Council of State needs to be scrapped.
Council of State ought to be scrapped.
Yep, they have to have a second chamber where we put ex-professionals, ex-IGPs, ex-military commanders, paramount chiefs and so forth to be there to make decisions and advising government. So there's a lot that we need to review as far as the Constitution is concerned. And I think we've started by having these lectures, but you need to move from the drawing board into action. And this is what we bring on the table as a government.
Let's talk about agriculture. You've already spoken about mechanizing agriculture and all of that. Easier said than done. You go to other parts of the world, Brazil and other places, the US, mechanized agriculture is the way to go. If you look at the population involved in agriculture versus what they produce, the quotient of it, and what it brings to America's GDP, you would see that we're practically joking. How are you going to implement that? We've had planting for food and jobs, rearing for food and jobs. It's amounted to nothing.
Let's move from the slogans to real action. What is the challenge here? We have issues with land tenure system and land ownerships. Government needs to solve that problem. There has to be deliberate policies to create enabling environment for private sector to drive this industry. We can't do everything as a government. All the government requires is to be able to create an enabling environment. If there are land tenure issues, if there are land ownership issues, today this guy owns it, after 6 months a ruling is given to another person, and that doesn't give comfort to investors, government to take responsibility on that. Secondly, another problem, financing, funding. How do we get funding? We're not attracting funding from local banks because banks are comfortable buying government treasury bills, and because government is borrowing and giving them trusted or guaranteed interest, so they're comfortable going in that. How do you resolve that? Government needs to stop competing with the private sector. External borrowing. Any external interest into the market would make sure that there's technology. Do we have the technology? No. Who has the technology? Israel. So you go to Israel, speak to the experts, let them partner with locals, and then immediately you have access to funding that can move into the mechanized farming. So
but you do know that, especially in terms of agriculture, I do not know how much of this you're aware of, but Ghana has partnered Israel for a long time on tech and especially agriculture. We have people who go study there. Are you aware of that?
Yes, but going to study there...
I'm just citing that as an example. There's more that goes on.
There's a different level I'm talking about here. I'm talking about people or business people in Israel seeing the potential in the investing their technology with locals here. At the moment, it's government and sponsorship relationship. We need to move from there to private sector driven, where the components that attract investors to come into the country are there. So they see that if I bring my technology to join A, who has 15 acres of land, I have access to X amount of money to grow my maize or rice. These are the sort of things I'm talking about. Practical things, not just these theoretical aspect or written contrast relationship that has not yielded anything. Let's move into the grants of it. Let's get the real action being taken. Somebody has to sit in Israel and say, wow, I have, like what they did in Zimbabwe and elsewhere. The farmers have to sit there and say, look, the opportunity is there. Let me go for it. It's not like government going to lure them or convince anybody, but we put the various components that attract people regardless of where they are to bring their technology to match up with the local expertise and get foreign funding to be able to move it to mechanized farming. I have a whole blueprint of that would be given into detail on our during of our policies.
Tell me, there's the scourge of Galamsey. It's destroying our natural resources, land resources, water resources, among others. I want to brief focus on the natural resources of Ghana. You can start from Galamsey, but I also want you to share with us, how are you going to basically weaponize the things that we have in the interest of Ghana? We have gold. It's not serving our purpose. In fact, sometimes you will see that we are claiming we've exported X amount of gold in a year. Other entities across the world tell us that actually you've sent more to other places. We don't know what happens with those. Now we've had oil, now there's lithium. What is your projection on these matters?
Okay, so let me talk about Galamsey. The situation in Galamsey is very pathetic as to why a nation like ours can't solve a problem endemic as this is serious. Look, if we destroy our water bodies, we cannot afford not to have water in our country. But we still can't solve this problem. Are we saying that if we get attacked by a neighbor, we cannot resolve the issue? Clearly, this is what we are saying. We have people in government who are doing this and at the same time saying they are solving the problem. Let's address the issue head on and make sure that the truth is laid on the table. The issue with Galamsey has to do with leadership. Our leadership needs to be up and doing and end this and end it. Because we can't just keep talking about we have Galamsey and it's not been. Look, the reason why it's going on is because our leadership are not that serious to address it, or they are not really holding the, what do you call it, hitting the nail where it's supposed to.
Which do you think it is?
I think it's people in government that are doing it. Parliamentarians, ministers, people who are supporting parties are having that as a, and this is what goes back to what I was saying, that when people's loyalty is to a political party as to a nation, these are the challenges that you face. And our system of governance that we're bringing in will naturally take care of this. But I'm hoping, and I'm saying to this, that our government, that solving the Galamsey issue falls right at their doorstep. They have no excuse to give that to hit the nail where it's supposed to be and go out there and solve the problem, because they know exactly who and who are involved in mining around these water bodies. Now, talking about our natural resources. Again, if you remember, I made a statement earlier that our system of governance, our structure of economy, everything is based on a colonial model which has been restructured. As to why we're sitting here 2003, 2004, and we are taking 2024, yeah. We're taking royalties in our minerals. It's where they are so creative, innovative way of raising money to do it on our own. It's unbelievable.
Share some of those with us.
What I'm saying is, when I get the opportunity, every mineral, every find would be 100% owned by Ghana. 100%, not 10%, not 50%.
How are you going to execute that? Especially when you're considering that a lot of the time why we lose these gargantuan sums of money has to do with the fact that when it comes to exploration, when it comes to funding the project from ground up, we don't have the resources. So we let these companies come in with high risk. And of course, high risk comes with high gain. And that is why we keep being on the losing end. You don't have the money. How are you going to work it out?
We don't have the money, but we have the assets. So you set up a wholly owned asset company. Then you have the, what do you call it, operating company. The operating company would be paid a fee. And the fee would be the experts that would bring in their technology, the experts that would bring in their funding, and they put into that port from day one. You become, for instance, in an oil, day one, you become the ExxonMobil. Let me tell you, The Chevrons, the ExxonMobil, the Shells, the guys that you see around are not necessarily working 24/7 for them. They are working on contracts. Today you see them in a Chevron jacket. Tomorrow they are wearing ExxonMobil's jacket because they've gotten the contract. We can do the same. So once the investor sees you have high-skilled labor, the experts are on the table, similar to what I was talking to you about the mechanized farming, you attract the funding. So the EXCO, the production company or the operating company is where these guys come and farm in. And then you pay them a fee. A similar concept was done in Norway after the Second World War when they found the oil. I mean, they took the British, they told the Americans, you have this, you have the technology, you have the money, we don't have it, but we have the oil, it's ours, we know it's there. So what we are saying is train and develop our people, we will take care of our own resources. Years down the line, Norway is not just exporting the products, they are exporting technology. Everywhere in the world where you are seeing experts in the oil field, they are Norwegians. It took a transformative leader, a leader that saw beyond, that brought a policy that benefits its people. We can do the same in our country. What has gone down to our people after how many years that we've spent mining gold in our country? If a Ghanaian geologist writes a competence report on any gold find and you take it to a stock exchange anywhere in the world, they will chuck in a bin, they will shred it because they know they don't have the skill, the know-how. How long are we going to continue this way? We have so many young people coming through that needs to be employed. We need to create opportunities for them, and that requires us taking radical decisions, being selfless in our approach, and making sure that Ghanaians benefit from our resources.
Let's talk about, of course, because of the limitations of time, I want us to look quickly at health and then also at infrastructure generally, especially roads. What do you feel you're going to bring to bear in these areas? Health has its own challenges. I don't know whether you've been to any of our public hospitals, but it can be pretty disturbing. Let me put it that way. Facilities, non-existent in most cases. You have the facilities, you don't have the drugs. Some are covered by the NHIS, others, they are covered, but even getting medication becomes a problem. In some cases, you cannot get even paracetamol in some parts of the country, district level. I mean, the problems are myriad. What are you going to do in health? And maybe you can add infrastructure, including roads, in there.
Okay, so number one, it's misplaced priorities. We're, as a country, more interested in finding a luxurious private jet for our presidents instead of buying a lift for a Kuala Lumpur teaching hospital where, what do you call it, patients can be lifted up and down in a hospital. These are the challenges we're facing as a country. So let's first address the issues of priority. What are our priorities as a nation? Are we really interested in solving our health issues? Because as you rightly said, even Komfo-Anokye Hospital, which sits right at the main hospital in Kuma, Ashanti region, our second biggest region, capital, just see the state of it. No, nothing, basically empty. So let's understand that government cannot do this on their own. Our government can only set up a frame, an enabling environment, and attract foreign investors into it. We sit in a country where people are more comfortable flying to America, England, Switzerland, even Cape Town in South Africa to treat themselves. Look at the kind of money they spent in dollars. Do you think that if there's a serious first-class infrastructure by a private sector driven, we will not have people patronizing? Yes, we will. But where are the enabling environments? If you are putting VAT on power, if you are charging e-levy, if you are putting all these nuisance tax at the head of people, what does businesses get to do? So first of all, create an environment, deliberate environment, to attract people into the health service, give incentives to them. Because if Ghana, as we know, we are known to be very hospitable, people love to be in this country, and it will be a very good location for people to come for education and for their medical treatment. But the private sector can drive this only if government would understand that and have deliberate policies to attract that in, which is not existent as we speak.
Okay, so that's how you address both angles, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's look at this though practically. Look. It has been said that the smaller parties, and even including independent candidates, maybe because getting a third force has been really difficult. And you look at examples like in the USA, even in the UK to some extent, and other countries. It's really difficult for any third party to really penetrate. Some have said the best way for the smaller parties, including independent candidates, to make any inroads is to come together, form some sort of coalesce, basically, to form some sort of coalition and then have a candidate, standout candidate. Is that a possibility? And is it because everybody wants to show as a presidential candidate that the smaller parties, including you independent guys, cannot do this?
I think you've asked a very, very important question. And you've said it all. We need to come together because we can't do this when we are fragmented. When we are little oceans, little fragments, Ghanaians were not going to take us serious. So we need a coalition, a united front to be able to hit this. But majority of this would depend on our people. I put this question to Ghanaians. If you feel that what you're going through now is the best you want to have, then please continue voting for NDC and MPP, but stop complaining. But if you think that you deserve better, you need to have a better living conditions, then start thinking differently. We need to do something different to get a different results. Einstein said it. It's only an insane person that keeps doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different results. We've gotten into a time in our political history that we've realized that continuing this way would not yield us what we want as a nation. Let's please pause for a minute, have a critical analysis of our situation, and make decisions that would turn this country around. And that starts from every individual out there that hears the sound of my voice, every Ghanaian in every part of this nation, that, hey, if you feel that your conditions are great or are okay, please continue with the current status quo. But if you want us to turn this around for you so that politics would benefit you, as one that is beginning to feel a bit of it, as the developed world have seen it over the years, then please pause for a minute and make a right decision.
I see. It reminds me of the quote by Henry Ford: if you keep doing what you've always done, you keep getting what you've always got. So are you calling here for the other parties to come together? Are you calling? Are you using this platform to call to the other parties? I mean, the CPPs, the PPPs, the LPGs, all these other smaller parties. Absolutely. Are you saying, let's come together and drive the force? And who leads?
Well, I mean, we can go for a Congress and choose a leader. Look, what I'm doing is not because Sam Ankrah wants to be president. I'm doing it because I want my fellow Ghanaians to benefit from this country and let politics change their lifestyle. I mean, I can't fathom why I'm walking around in 2024 and seeing Ghanaians drinking from dirty stream, where the same place where animals also, I mean, it's appalling. Let's bring dignity back to our people. Let's change things around. And I believe that if all of these guys understands this, and this is the reason why they are making the noise they are making, then let's come together collectively with one voice. Tell Ghanaians that the status quo has failed us and is the only way out.
Maybe my final bit to you before you give us your final words. You're an investment banker.
Yes.
A lot has happened to the banking space, and now some say the banks are usually going for low-hanging fruit, T-bills, engaging government and crowding out the private sector. If you look at the banking sector cleanup, if you look at the Bank of Ghana and so-called doling out of money to government, which has led to about a 60 billion Ghana cedi debt, and everything that is happening in our banking space, what would you, as an investment banker in power, do in that regard? That would be my final question to you.
First of all, I would cut government borrowing in the local market by 50%, because that's the only way you free money for the private sector to do other things. If government is throwing treasury bills, is floating bonds on a regular basis, and the banks are more comfortable taking from there because it's a safe bet than going to a private person to diagnose their business and fund it because of the risk involved. Government needs to cut their local borrowing by 50% minimum, and then we can phase it out. So that
how do you do that in the grips of an IMF program?
Well, I mean, we're not borrowing from the local. I mean, the banks themselves have learned in a hard way. The debt restructuring had really taught them lessons that yes, government debt may be safe, but it's not all safe in perpetuity. So create the opportunity for the private sector to have access into the local borrowing. So what I'm saying is, it's possible. It can be done at the IMF. The IMF does not stop Ghana government from borrowing or stop borrowing or borrowing from the local market. I don't see it anywhere in any of the agreements that we've signed with them. So that gives them the opportunity to stop completely from competing with the local market. It frees money for the private sector to do what they have to do. Then again, the central bank, I mean, I don't know what their supervision rule is, but clearly it tells you that for this to happen in our banking sector on 2 consecutive occasions, it tells you that the supervision sector of our central bank is dysfunctional.
Right.
Because you can't sit there for the problem to occur and then react after. You need to be proactive as a compliance person, as somebody that sits there supervising these banks. How were they monitoring the books of these banks? What were the things that they were seeing? And how were they reporting back? And what decisions were being taken? So these are the things that falls back into the central bank. So we need to strengthen the compliance section of our central bank. We need to strengthen their monitoring aspect of it. And that is the only way we can bring sanity into the banking sector as far as that is concerned. Or else we'll be sitting here and all the time we are either closing banks or bringing money to resuscitate them, as has been done over the years.
Final words, Dr. Ankrah.
Well, fellow Ghanaians, it's good once again to speak to you. I just talk to you as your humble servant that the current situation that we're in, the only way this can end is if we can restructure our systems. I know year after year you've been clamoring for change. You've been looking for a leadership that will change your lifestyle. But just 3 months or a month after election, you still go back to the same status quo, nothing has changed. Clearly, it tells you that what we are doing will not solve our problems. Let's look elsewhere. If we want to change, let's do something different. I'm offering you that alternative, and I'm pleading with you to have a critical analysis of exactly what I'm saying and what we intend to do, and support this vision so that we can end this status quo and build our country together for us and the generations behind us. God bless our homeland, Ghana. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Sam Ankrah. Thank you for coming, and thank you for sharing your thoughts with us, and we wish you the very best on this trajectory. Dr. Sam Ankrah is, of course, an investment banker. He wants to be president. He is with the Alternative for Action movement, AFA. Is that how?
That's right.
AFA. AFA. All right. Okay. So this is
December by this time now.
December by this time now. Okay, so that's what he says. Well, stick and stay with us. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to get interactive with you to let you have your say on some of these discussions that we've had. When we return from the break, we'd love to hear from you. Do stay. Welcome back. We're going to try to squeeze in some of your thoughts and comments on these matters. Joining me, Sweetie Abochi. You went around talking to people about the Black Stars and their performance. But before I come back to you, we have Na Ofebia from Ankrah on the line. Let me quickly do that. Na, good morning.
Hello, good morning, Ben.
Thank you for holding. What are your thoughts you'd like to share with us this morning?
What I would like to say is I'm very excited about Dr. Ankrah, Sam Ankrah. I just watched him on Joy. I've seen a program you interviewed him, I think, maybe a month or so, a few months ago. And I'm very hopeful because he's very
I actually just had an
open-minded.
interview with him, Dr. Ankrah.
Pardon?
I just had an interview with him this morning.
I watched it.
Right.
And I think I've seen him on other channels as well.
Okay, right. I get
And
it.
I'm excited because he's very open-minded. He's embracing other political parties, other Ghanaians who are willing to change. I'm passionate about the environment, and the filth in Ghana at the moment really upsets me. I wrote to the Jubilee House, took my letter on 31st of January last year, 2023, and the problems have worsened. So I go out giving boxes to vendors and food sellers or at the bus stations, and I write, put sachet bags here for people to put their sachet bags, because the municipals have no good system in place to manage refuse.
Right.
So Nkrumah Mausoleum have different plastic bags flying, and it's attached itself to the fence, the metal fence around the car park. So, and there's refuse on the ground everywhere. So there's a crisis about lack of systems or workable systems in the Ghanaian system. So I'm very excited about Dr. Sam Ankrah.
Now, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on this matter. Now, Fabia calling from Ankrah. We have just a little time to squeeze in about 1 or 2 calls if you're minded to do so. 0302-211-691. Do we have a call on the line? Do we have a call on the line?
No.
All right, it doesn't appear we have a caller on the line. What did you gather when you went out there interacting with, all these people on the Black Stars?
That our hearts are broken. Ghanaians are quite disappointed about the turnout of yesterday's game. But all hope is not lost. There are some people who have the view that there were some of the goals that should have been protested. We had some penalties somewhere that was not taken, and that the referee was not working in our favor. But whatever the case, they think that the game should have started with the old players, the Ayus, the people who came in the second half. They were the ones who should have started the game. There was a woman who I spoke to who was giving us great analysis. She says that regardless of the noise Ghanaians are making, that the Ayu brothers have taken over the game, the Ghana football club, Black Stars club, there's still so much they can do for the game if they start first. So, yeah, we're looking forward to Thursday's game to see if we do anything different and if we're able to win or even progress from this group stage.
Did you watch the match?
I watched the first half.
Okay.
And I went to bed after because I was heartbroken myself. I don't think that I've ever sat through a full Black Star game, recently. 42 years. I was looking forward to us breaking this 42-year whatever.
Jinx.
But, let's see. It's still early days, so let's see how that goes. Yeah. What did you think? Did you watch the game?
I did not watch the game. I had other things to do at the time. Honestly, I wasn't that enthused about watching the Black Stars. Some of us have learned to moderate our emotions versus expectations versus all of that. But I was genuinely hoping that when I checked, I was actually checking the results online, hoping that in the end we would win. Unfortunately, it didn't go our way.
8 minutes to time, man.
But I mean, it's not the end of the road. No. It's possible to bounce back.
Yeah.
Thank you, sweetie.
Thank
Abochi, for joining the conversation. And this is how we wrap up the conversation. But before I go, this is a birthday message to Reverend Emmanuel Abronoma Nyako Auntie. It says, happy 70th birthday. On this special day, we want to thank you for all the love, wisdom, and support you've given us throughout the years. Your guidance and strength have been a source of inspiration. May this milestone be filled with joy, laughter, and cherished moments with family and friends. Here's to many more years of health, happiness, and unforgettable memories. We love you, Papa. That's from Dr. Peter Pate Auntie and siblings. And that's to you, Reverend Emmanuel Abronoma Nyako Auntie. Happy birthday to you. And that's how we cap off the conversation, but look forward to more fireworks with yours truly tomorrow on the AM show. Up next, Joy News Desk. Do stay.